to the sky. Never let adventures pass you by. Be free and follow your crazy dreams. We're living our vision in the RV. Come ride with us and you'll be free.
Starting where we left off last week at the rockfish capital of the world, today is Sunday, and we're on our way to Petersburg National Battlefield to learn and share more about the history of our country during the Civil War. We're ready to go. Stop here at Walmart real quick. Had a few things we needed to grab. Just about forgot. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna run over and grab a Dunkin' Donut coffee. We didn't have time to make our own coffee, so we're trying to rush as quickly as we can this morning. This is Sunday, so we've got to do as much as we can today. All right, I think we're about ready to get coffee.
Yes, on to the next little stop first.
And then maybe we'll wake up and go, oh, this is what we should do.
This is where we're at.
Yeah. That too. The Civil War was a very sad time in our country's history, but will always be just that, part of our history.
In there.
You're going in there?
Save our water.
Oh, we'll be dumping here soon.
Yeah, he always says that, and then we're scrambling to try to find a dump station.
Who are you talking to?
Oh, nobody.
Don't watch.
What's that noise?
I'll be done in a minute.
What are you doing?
Nothing. This is supposed to be free here, but Michelle's going to go in and get our national park pass just in case it's needed for something else that does cost in here.
I was just looking to see when it was expiring. It's coming up in June. We usually renew it back in Iowa when we're there. These Civil War places really, they're very emotional.
Horrible war.
It was an extremely horrible war. So many casualties and it just gets you.
Yep, absolutely. It has been generally estimated at 620,000 soldiers died between 1861 and 1865. That is approximately equal to the total of American fatalities in the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and the Korean War combined, all at the hands of Americans expressing their hatreds, their deepest prejudices, and their fierce ideologies.
For a month, Petersburg is a critical manufacturing center.
When you come to the visitor center here, be sure to go inside. It's just a small little museum, some artifacts, and make sure you watch the film as well when you say.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Definitely. And then when you leave here, we'll be going straight out. You're going to cross 36, and as soon as you cross 36, the road's going to split. You want to stay to the right. You'll just keep going through the entire thing, and there'll be different stops. There'll be signs up for little places that you can get out or just keep going, whatever you want to do. Something else that we found inside the visitor center that is very helpful is a QR code that you can scan. And that QR code is for what?
The National Park Service app for your phone. NPS app.
It's an app that has all of their national parks. And you can use it for many things. And one of the things that's really helpful is when you're doing a drive-through tour like this,
it has an audio tour.
yes, and it's very helpful. We used one for Gettysburg, but I don't think that one was through the national park. I think this is something new that they come up with since then, because we didn't see it then. But they may have had it. Maybe we just didn't see
young
it.
black soldiers in their first day of combat. Battery number 8 will be taken by men from the 1st United States Colored Troops, along with the 22nd USCT.
The last significant battles of the American Civil War raged around the 10-month siege of Petersburg, gateway to the Confederate capital of Richmond. On May 4, 1864, the Federal Army crossed the Rapidan River 20 miles west of Fredericksburg. The next day, Confederate General Robert E. Lee's forces struck the Union Army in the wilderness, opening a month-long campaign of nearly non-stop fighting and staggering casualty totals.
This whole area that we're going to be walking through right here is Confederate Battery 9. Its black troops captured this position during the first day's fighting. The site features examples of siege fortifications and related structures. There's a trail that leads to a wayside on Meade Station, an important supply and hospital depot on the U.S. military railroad built during the siege, and that's a 10-minute walk.
During the lull in marching and fighting during the winter months, soldiers built log cabins to keep snug against the cold, like this replica of a typical cabin.
Attacking entrenchments was such a fearful because you basically would always die if you went to attack anything like an entrenchment like that. That the privates didn't want to do it because they're like, I don't want to go do that. I know I'm going to get shot or what. I'm going to die.
Exactly. Can't blame them. The Battle of Fort Stedman, also known as the Battle of Hares Hill, was fought on March 25, 1865, during the final weeks of the American Civil War. Desperate to relieve the Union noose strangling Petersburg, General Lee used pre-dawn darkness and stealth to pierce the Union line here at Fort Stedman. Although initially successful, the attack soon lost momentum. Union reinforcements arrived and counterattacked. The Confederates fell back over and into the fort. Hundreds were killed or captured.
A frightened Union picket brought the first warning of the onslaught on Fort Stedman. Drowsy Union cannoneers and infantrymen had barely reached their posts before the Confederate storming party swarmed into Battery 10, then the fort itself. Thousands of Confederates plunged into the shattered Union line. They pushed south, to your left, toward Fort Haskell, north toward Battery 9, and east toward the Union rear, behind you.
The Confederates start shelling it from other places in the Union line, and so quickly it's determined that they had to get a flag back up just to establish that it hadn't fallen to the Confederates.
Field here, there's a chimney about the middle distance of the field. What's this chimney from?
Well, like a lot of these.
Behind it. Whose idea was it to build this tunnel? And is that entrance the original?
Well, the tunnel project probably had very simple origins because stationed here after the initial assaults are called off after the attacks on June 18th, and Grant begins to besiege the city of Petersburg and move around to cut off the various Confederate supply lines coming into town. One of the units that ends up being posted here in this part of the line belonged to the Union 9th Corps and was the 48th Pennsylvania Veteran Volunteer Infantry, most of which had been enlisted from the area around Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania.
So it says for a month they burrowed a shaft 511 feet into the hillside so that they could put explosives in it and then blow up the Confederate battery that was sitting on top of it.
After the initial attacks on Petersburg by Union forces on June 18, a portion of the 9th Corps picket line was established only 400 feet from Elliott's Salient, part of the main Confederate line. The Federals decided to explode a mine underneath the salient in an attempt to overwhelm the Confederates and seize the heights above Petersburg and thereby shorten the siege. After several weeks of preparation, the mine was exploded on July 30th, 4:45 a.m. The Union sent unit after unit into the 200-foot wide gap created in the Confederate line. The poorly led Federal soldiers end up heading into the crater and not around it as planned. Though the Federals outnumbered the Confederates, they were unable to advance from the crater or easily retreat from it, as the Confederates made both routes killing fields. The 4th Division of the 9th Corps, which was comprised of USCT regiments, were the last to enter the action. Their first engagement, they advanced farther than any other Federal unit. The main Confederate counterattack led by General William Mahone arrived shortly after this, drove back the USCTs, and plugged the gap in the Confederate line. At 9:30 a.m., General Ambrose Burnside, commander of the 9th Corps, received orders to call off the attack and any more support to the Union soldiers in the crater. The soldiers in the hole did not learn of this until 12:30 that afternoon. With a gap sealed, the Confederates slowly advanced on the crater and in one final rush pushed into the hole itself. In what was the fiercest hand-to-hand combat of the whole siege, the Union troops, who still outnumbered the Confederates, surrendered to these determined defenders. As prisoners are being taken to the rear, unarmed black soldiers who had been calling for no quarter were now shot down by some of their captors. After nearly 10 hours of fighting and a combined loss of nearly 5,500 casualties, nothing had changed tactically. In what may have been General U.S. Grant's best chance at ending the siege of Petersburg, instead became a symbol of military debacle. As for the principal players, Mahone was promoted to Major General, Burnside was relieved of command, and Grant summed it up best for the Union, saying, "The Battle of the Crater was the saddest affair I have ever witnessed in the war." The Confederates abandoned Richmond, and on April 9, 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant following the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse, setting in motion the end of the war. So we did the eastern front, correct?
Right, which is this part. And, I mean, there's Grant's headquarters at City Point, way back here. There's the western front part that you can go through. We're not going to do that today. And then there's Five Forks battlefield. But all of that, I can't remember exactly, but I believe the ranger said it's like 30 miles.
Yeah, he did. He said it was 30 miles, the entire thing. I think what we're going to do right now is go visit the Petersburg Old Town Historic District and see what's down there and maybe get a bite to eat down there.
Sounds good.
First. And then we'll figure something out. Gonna have pie today?
No, not today.
Not today? I feel like Sanford. Oh, kiss me, dummy. I think I'm gonna have a big one. All right, we found a place to park here in the old downtown area. Keep in mind it's a Sunday, so we noticed that there was a lot of restaurants closed, like this place right here called Dixie Restaurant. That had some good ratings, I believe, didn't it? Wasn't that like a 4?
Yeah, I think so.
So they're closed, but there's one that's open over here that Google Maps also said was closed, but they have a great big sign outside that says open, as if they know everybody thinks that they're closed on Sundays usually. Newsflash, we're eating healthy today.
You're not getting a burger and fries?
I am not getting a burger or fries. You're not getting pie?
I am not getting pie.
You're not getting a donut?
No.
You're not getting anything sweet?
Well, it's probably the bourbon glaze on the salmon.
Some of us is eating healthy today. We're having a salmon glaze, what is it? Some
Kentucky
salmon salad.
bourbon glazed salmon salad.
Yes, that's what we're having. First off, I want to say the salads were very good. That salmon,
excellent. Yes.
very, very good. If we were rating it on our 1 to 10 scale, it's 8.5 or 9 maybe.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good.
Very good.
The salmon made it.
Yeah.
Could have. I'm saying 8.5 because it needed to be a little bit more. I'm still
Well,
hungry.
you're used to a burger and fries.
Just when I thought we were doing so good. And it's open.
Oh my goodness. The case is like right there.
And the case is right there.
We gotta go see it
Oh.
at least.
Be strong, Brian. Be strong. Be strong. I am so proud of you, honey. You are strong.
I got pie in here.
No wonder. Forgot about her pie in there. Always got a backup plan, don't you? Always got a
back.
You're so funny.
We had to stop and get some fuel first here. Been waiting here a while. I do have one question for you though. Why did you not use our restroom when we're getting ready to dump the tanks anyway?
Preference.
Really, you would rather use a dirty bathroom than ours?
Proceed to the route.
Okay. Siri, we are proceeding to the route. Well, good morning. We're going to run through here and see Chatham Manor. Chatham Manor is a Georgia-style mansion home completed in 1771 by farmer and statesman William Fitzhugh. It was the center of a large, thriving plantation for more than a century and the only private residence in the United States to be visited by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Washington's diaries note that he was a frequent guest at Chatham. He and Fitzhugh had served together in the House of Burgesses before the American Revolution and shared a love of farming and horses. Fitzhugh's daughter, Molly, had even married the first president's step-grandson, George Washington Parke Curtis. Chatham has a long history, including a part of the country's racial tensions. In January 1805, Chatham's slaves overpowered and whipped their overseer and assistants in a minor slave rebellion. An armed posse of white men quickly gathered. They killed one slave in the attack, and 2 more died trying to escape capture. The other slaves were deported, likely to the Caribbean or Louisiana, and Fitzhugh soon sold the property. 5 decades later, in 1857, owner Hannah Jones Coulter died and attempted to set free her 93 slaves after making provisions both for her daughter and the slaves. Her relatives sued, claiming that the slaves were legally incapable of choosing whether to remain enslaved or receive their freedom and enough money to establish themselves in another state. While local judges thought the executors should free the slaves per Hannah's intent, a divided Virginia Supreme Court disagreed. Thus, the executors sold Chatham with its slaves to J. Horace Lacey, husband of Hannah's much younger half-sister, Betty. The house was owned by James Horace Lacey from 1823 to 1906. The Civil War brought change and destruction to Chatham. During the American Civil War, the Laceys abandoned Chatham. Its strategic site overlooking Fredericksburg briefly served as a U.S. Army headquarters and later as a significant Union hospital during the battles for control of the strategic Virginia City and Spotsylvania County en route to the Confederate capital. For 13 months, Chatham was occupied by the Union Army. Orders, reports, and letters referred to it as the Lacey House. Northern officers initially used the mansion as a headquarters. 7 months after Lincoln's visit, fighting again erupted at Fredericksburg. In November 1862, General Ambrose E. Burnside brought the 120,000-man army to Fredericksburg. Using pontoon bridges, Burnside crossed the Rappahannock River below Chatham, seized Fredericksburg, and launched a series of bloody assaults against Lee's Confederates, who held the high ground behind the town. One of Burnside's top generals, Edward Sumner, observed the battle from Chatham, while U.S. artillery batteries shelled the Confederates from adjacent bluffs. The Battle of Fredericksburg became a disastrous Union defeat. Burnside suffered 12,600 casualties, many of whom were brought back to Chatham and the nearby Conway House for care. For several days, Army surgeons operated on hundreds of soldiers inside the house. Walt Whitman had come to Chatham searching for a brother wounded in the fighting. The carnage shocked him so much. He later wrote a published description that at the foot of a tree he noticed, quote, a heap of amputated feet, legs, arms, hands, etc. About a load for a one-horse cart. Several dead bodies lie near, each covered with its brown woolen blanket, end quote. More than 130 Union soldiers died at Chatham and were initially buried on the grounds. After the war, their bodies were removed to the Fredericksburg National Cemetery. Years later, when 3 additional bodies were discovered, the remains were buried at Chatham at the outskirts of the again famous gardens. In the winter following the battle, the U.S. Army camped in Stafford County behind Chatham. The Confederate Army occupied Spotsylvania County across the river. Opposing pickets patrolled the riverfront, keeping a wary eye on their foe. Occasionally, the men would trade newspapers and other articles using miniature sailboats. When not on duty, Union pickets slept at Chatham. As the winter progressed and firewood became scarce, some soldiers tore paneling from the walls for fuel, exposing underlying plaster. Military activity resumed in the spring. In April, the new Union commander, General Joseph Hooker, led most of the army upriver, crossing behind Lee's troops. Other portions remained in Stafford County, including John Gibbon's division at Chatham. The Confederates marched out to meet Hooker's main force, and for a week, fighting raged around a country crossroad known as Chancellorsville. At the same time, Union troops crossed the Rappahannock at Fredericksburg and drove a Confederate force off Maury Heights behind the town. Many of the 1,000 casualties suffered by the Union Army in that 1863 engagement were sent back to Chatham, which again served as a hospital. By the time the Civil War ended in 1865, Chatham was desolate and severely damaged. When the Lacey's returned in November 1865, over 750 panes of glass had been broken. Bloodstains spotted the floors, graffiti marred in its bare plaster walls, and much of the interior wood paneling had been removed for firewood. The surrounding forest had been cut down for fuel. The gardens and several outbuildings were damaged or destroyed, and the lawn had been used as a graveyard. Some of their furniture had been evacuated, and the transport boat sank in the Rappahannock, ruining much of it. Unable to maintain their home properly without enslaved people, they moved to their house known as Elwood and sold Chatham in 1872 to a Pennsylvania banker for $23,900. The property had a succession of owners until the 1920s when General Daniel Bradford DeVore and his wife Helen Stewart DeVore undertook its restoration. The restoration reoriented the house away from the west front of the river, no longer the main transportation route. The east entrance became the main entrance, easily reachable by automobile. As a result of the DeVore's efforts, Chatham regained its place among Virginia's finest homes. Today, the house and the 85 acres of surrounding grounds are open to the public. The last private owners, Northern Neck native and General Motors executive John Lee Pratt and his wife, purchased the Chatham estate from the DeVores in 1931 for $150,000 cash. During World War II, Pratt served as one of President Roosevelt's $1-a-year men. Pratt met and had as visitors General George Marshall and Dwight Eisenhower, among many others. Upon Pratt's death in 1975, he willed the land around the mansion to Stafford County for parks and a large section to the region's YMCA. This also left the manor house and approximately 30 acres surrounding it to the National Park Service, which uses it as the headquarters for the Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania National Military Park.